Education is all I've known. Growing up in the Middle East, I was taught a rigid set of values in school. Respecting others is ingrained in us as children. It kept me on my toes to never do anything that may be deemed disrespectful. If I did, the punishment could be severe, from being isolated from my peers to, in extreme cases, being beaten. The whole emphasis of school was placed on your grades. It didn't matter if you memorized everything and understood nothing. Growing up in Arabic society taught me important values like endless generosity, compassion for others, and helping the less fortunate with whatever you can spare. It also had tougher values, like never speaking back to your elders, obeying the rules without question, and failing is frowned upon, rather than accepted as a part of the learning process. Luckily for me, my parents rejected those values entirely and wanted to raise my brother and I to be more open-minded. So, we packed our bags and made our way westward. The second we set foot in the US, the culture shock hit us like a train. We didn't have much time to settle down because schools had already started. Once we got a living space, I started my last year in middle school, and I hated it, to put it mildly. Middle schoolers aren't known to be the most welcoming people on the planet. And while I made incredible and lifelong friends during that time, I was also consistently bullied for being the foreign kid. They never passed a moment without reminding me that I didn't belong. Aside from prepubescent bullies, my academics were similar to what I had in the Middle East. Once I reached high school, I finally began assimilating into American society. I aced all my classes, played sports, and made even more friends. Life seemed to fly by without a struggle until I hit junior year. It was the first time since I came to the US that I was truly challenged. Writing, reading, and analytical thinking were ramped up by a magnitude of 10. This, however, was the inflection point that made me more methodical with problem solving and improved my writing drastically. As I entered my senior year, I sharpened the skills I learned in the prior year and passed with flying colors. Armed with 4 years of education and a diploma, I was finally ready to move on to the next phase of my life. Higher education. To my surprise, community college felt more like an extension of high school, with the exception of a bigger campus, slightly tougher classes, and more flexibility in my schedule. Fast forward 2 years, I got my associate's degree and went to Millersville University, where I spent the next 3 years. It started off slow. I met new friends and settled into my new environment away from home for the first time. As with every college student, it didn't take long before I started to burst at the seams with classes, clubs, and extracurriculars breathing down my neck. In my last semester, things started to look up as I secured an internship on campus and was ready to sprint to the finish line. At that point, it didn't hit me yet that I was almost done with schooling forever. No more classes, no more papers, no more grades. It didn't seem real at first, as I slowly came to terms with the end of my final semester. It was the perfect opportunity for me to pause, reflect, and recognize how far I had come in my life. But, of course, life had different plans.
China has identified the cause of the
mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
Well, I finished my bachelor's degree from my parents' couch. I felt like I lost everything I worked for up to that point. No grand send-off and no graduation to show for it. My anxiety was compounded when I was inundated with the endless news cycle talking about nationwide layoffs as I was just getting ready to enter the workforce. After 2 months of searching and multiple rejections, however, I was lucky enough to land a position with a local company. And off to adulting I went. Since we were still at the height of the pandemic, I went to the office on some days and pretended to work from home on others. A few months in, I realized that I wasn't truly passionate about the field I had spent the previous 5 years studying to work in. This added insult to the injury of having my collegiate career ended early because of the pandemic. To top it all off, I also lost family members because of this treacherous virus. That's when I hit one of the lowest moments of my life. After indulging in some unhealthy coping mechanisms and wallowing in self-pity for a while, I decided to try my hand at something new to pull myself out of the hole I dug for myself. With the money I saved, I brought my first camera and dove into the worlds of photography and filmmaking. Whether it was meant to be or by complete coincidence, I slowly became obsessed with them. As I approached the 1-year mark in my job, I was finally able to get a graduation and some sense of closure. But I know that I couldn't stay in my position for much longer and needed a backup plan soon. And that is when the opportunity of a lifetime presented itself. The university office I interned with offered me a graduate assistantship that would enable me to complete my master's degree while working part-time. Thinking I was done with school forever, I was initially reluctant to accept. But somewhere in the back of my mind was a nagging voice that told me how much I would regret not jumping at this opportunity that many people dream about. This was my one and only chance to get a master's degree. So, I gave my 2 weeks notice, dusted off my notebooks, and back to school I went. Once I was back on campus, I was in for a rude awakening. I didn't fit in anymore, whether it's because I wasn't living on campus anymore or I had miraculously matured over the 1 year I spent working. I couldn't relate to many of the undergrad students I met. Confused, I thought I would spend the next 2 years working hard, getting my degree, and pursuing my passions post-graduation. After all, grad school was just a stepping stone to changing careers. It turns out, I was dead wrong. This experience became one of the most impactful and fruitful times of my life. I learned about the cultures of students from around the world. I learned about filmmaking, photography, and writing. And, most importantly, I was able to discover myself by studying different disciplines, experimenting in projects, and learning from my mistakes. While it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, primarily because I had to commute 2 hours every fucking day, I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. As I walked across the stage for the final time, I felt nothing but gratitude for the experiences I had during my time there. Beyond the technical knowledge that I learned, it's those treasured memories that I will never forget. While the road to maturity is long and winding, I feel ready to go for round 2 with the real world. Oh, and I also got a master's degree. I've made it my mission to always learn, educate myself, and be curious. Many people lose their childlike fascination with the world around them and love for exploration as they grow older. Overworked, lost, or simply keeping up with the demands of their daily lives, they inadvertently get swept along the tide of their responsibilities. While I admire and respect those people, I would argue that it's equally as important to maintain that fascination with life. Our tendency for exploration allows us to innovate, create meaning, and live fulfilling lives. That's why I want to continue creating. Life will always throw curveballs at us. It's up to us then to dust ourselves off and get ready to bat again. And that's what I'll continue doing. Because the day I lose my curiosity is the day I stop breathing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time as the journey continues. Assalamu alaikum.